Thank you, everybody. And welcome to this session on standing out from the crowd, getting noticed by recruiters. It's our partner on this session is Elevate, so big thank you to them. Helen is here from Elevate for making this happen. Although it's called Get Noticed by Recruiters, when we all kind of brainstormed this on Friday, we thought, yeah, well, there's another piece to this as well, because good recruitment isn't just on you guys, the talent, it's also on the recruiters to get their practices right and do them well. So we're going to talk about that, but we would like you to leave here with some takeaways about what to do next in your career and how to go and secure the next role. So hopefully you'll get some real practical hints. And I know I, for one, will be around afterwards in the coffee breaks if anyone wants to come and talk to me. So I'm Jane. I'm one of the directors of Women in Football. I also have a board role with Premiership Rugby, and I also chair something called PJAC, which is it's like Ofsted for the academies in football, is the best way to describe it. I've got a great panel with me here today. I'll just introduce them quickly. First up is Helen Soulsby. She heads up Elevate Talent's consulting services and is a senior partner for Europe, having previously led the company's growth across the APAC region. So prior to her SRI career, SRI Elevate, now the same company, Helen worked in the sports industry for 15 years, is that right?
Yep.
Great stuff. And you're also a trustee at Advance, a national charity supporting women and girls who've experienced domestic abuse. Really important work. And I'm sure, when we think about things like Get Board Ready, which is a little bit of what we're going to talk about, looking at charities and non-profits can be a key part of that. So welcome, Helen.
Thanks, Jane.
Next up, we have Euan Cresswell. Hello, Uma.
Hi.
Uma is a board member and a board advisor on a number of boards, so she has a portfolio career, including with the EFL Trust. She's also the President Emeritus on the board of the City Women Network. And your background, Uma, is in the corporate world rather than sport, isn't it? I know talking to you, you said you were a mad keen Leicester City fan. You were so keen to get a role in sport, and now you're living the dream, which is great. So a globally experienced business leader and strategic thinker. I think that'd be fair. Looking at your CV, I know you've worked across the world. So welcome, Uma.
Thank you.
Next to Uma is Ayesha Tabbal. Now, Ayesha is a diversity, equity and inclusion advocate. She's currently working with an organisation called Diverse. And Diverse is a careers community of over 8,000 black and ethnic minority, I'm going to call them young people, because, to me they are you lovely young folk. It's taking your first steps in the career, fantastic. And this network isn't it, for people who are at entry level or early level in their careers?
Exactly, yeah, helping them to get their first role in the corporate world.
Fantastic. And your role there at Diverse, Ayesha, if I've got this right, is you're a client and careers community manager.
Yeah.
Lovely. And I love that word community in there, because clearly, like Women in Football, you're a network, and that could be so powerful. So welcome.
Exactly. Thank you.
And at the end, we have Euan Frizzell, who's a partner with Odgers and Berndtson. And Odgers provide executive recruitment services to a wide range of sports and sports-related organisation. Euan specialises in C-suite, NED roles and corporate sports appointment. And I believe you're the global lead on elite sports appointments. Is that right?
Yep.
Great stuff. Welcome, Euan. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is your panel. So let's make a start. We'll start with, we've got it up there, Get Noticed by Recruiters. So, and I on the last panel we heard Alison use a great phrase, which was something we talked about in our pre-call, about owning it, how to own it as a candidate, how to tell your story. Maybe, Helen, I can start with you. From your point of view, can you tell from a CV when a candidate is owning it, and what does a great CV look like?
Can you tell from a CV? Not with a lot of the CVs that we receive. They can be quite average. So I think when you're looking at your CV, just remember that many people, and I'm not just talking about recruiters here, because if you're lucky enough to go for a role with a recruiter, they're going to spend time to work through your CV and counsel you on your CV. But if your CV is going straight into an employer, the likelihood is they'll only look at the top third, and then they'll lose interest. And if you haven't captured them in that top third, that's basically is the biggest top tip I would have. The other thing is, remember that they're going to probably want to run it through some word recognition elements and stuff, so just be careful with how much you over-design them, because that can be difficult for them to pick up words through AI technology and stuff like that. So at a very, very basic level, I would say that that is your absolute top tip. Just focus on that first third in terms of what makes a decent CV. The rest of it, if you're talking about, do you really think someone's owning it? I mean, it sounds like I've got to strut down the catwalk and really own it and really sell yourself for this role. So I think it will be really interesting when we get into the broader discussion that this is not just about how a woman can stand out from the crowd. I mean, we had a big discussion about the title of this, and we were a little bit, it's good, right? Because it's like kind of catchy, but it's a little bit offensive in many ways as well, right? Because it's like, well, why do I all of a sudden need to stand out from the crowd, right? What are you doing to welcome me in and want my skill set? So I think when we get into that discussion, it'll be an interesting one.
No, thanks, Helen. Uma, what about you? What would your advice be to the people in the room in terms of how to give themselves the best opportunity?
So my background's all investment banking, and so I've traversed to the light side from the dark side. And picking up a little bit of what Alison said earlier, it's taking my functional skills in banking and applying it into a different sector. But I have to say, it took me 2 years to get a role in football. It's a pretty tight-knit ship. So I think standing out for me, I had to build a brand. I had to build a brand outside of banking. I did that by speaking to existing non-exec directors in cross-sector, cross-industries, just to say, you know, I've got these sets of skills. My background's human resources, but I had a strong governance background. I knew that football was going to go through some governance and some reform on the back of fan-led reviews. So LinkedIn, thought leadership pieces, talking to recruiters like Euan, actually, who I met 4 years ago, talking to existing non-execs, and using my career coach as well, just to say, what can I do to build my brand and to sell myself in football?
Okay, thank you. Ayesha, you're working with early career candidates. What are you finding? You clearly offer a lot of support to people to secure those all-important dream jobs. What kind of help do you think people are finding, and what kind of advice do you give them?
That's a good question. I think before any practical help with, CV tips, applications, interviews, you have to build up someone's confidence first to believe that they are desirable in the world of work. So that's kind of, I think, the first thing that we would focus on. Because I guess for our community that we work with, like you said, it's a lot of underrepresented young people that might not feel that they are seeing themselves in the places that they want to work. So I guess for diverse, we only work with companies that are interested in improving their diversity, and we work with top brands across the UK, so showing them that you are wanted and this is the way to put your best foot forward, I think is probably where I would start before any of the more practical tips.
So we're going to come back to the employer again, starting with the employer, which we will spend some time on. But let me just bring Euan in. Euan, what advice would you give to them? What do you think a good CV looks like?
I think in terms of the CV, a lot of people will ask about, how should I tweak and tailor the CV for the role? And I maybe have a little bit of a different view in that. I think your CV should be authentic to who you are and where your strengths are, and also the experience that you have. Personally, I think the way you can really differentiate is more in the cover letter that supports the CV, and really thinking about 3 things that are going to help differentiate you, and almost spoon-feed the recruiter or the hiring manager so that you're pretty unequivocally clear about why you're suitable for the role. So the first bit would be demonstrating you understand the business, and that might be just basics around their turnover, their profitability, what their strategic challenges are, the context of that within the wider ecosystem. And then related to that would be the role itself. Where does the role sit within the organisation? What impact is it going to have around 3 or 4 areas? And then the final bit is showing why you are suitable to help that role and have that impact within it. So rather than spending loads of time retweaking CVs because you're probably going to go for different sorts of roles, actually thinking about making the CV relevant through a cover letter can often be much more impactful and differentiate you.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Let's take it to employers, because I was really struck, Ayesha, when you said we work with certain organisations who want to do it. And meaning they are committed to equity and diversity and inclusion. Have those organisations, do you think, been on a journey to get there? What kind of work have they had to do?
Yes, and I think the journey is also ongoing as well, because ED&I has changed so much since it was popularised, let's say, in 2020, and no one really knew, except for the companies that were already doing it and had that embedded as part of their business, no one really knew the first best steps to take. And how best to promote that within their company. So yes, definitely on a journey, but the journey is ongoing. I think a very big part that I've seen that has changed a lot is the introduction of belonging more recently, because a lot of companies have found that they are bringing in that diverse talent. They might have a couple of policies in place, maybe employee resource groups or whatever, but if the diverse talent doesn't feel like they belong in the company, then it's no use. You're going to have high turnover, or you'll have a mass exodus of all the underrepresented talent leave the company, which doesn't look good ever. So I think focusing on that belonging piece and really being able to champion their diverse talent within the company and listening, I think, is also the most important thing. It's very easy to say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but we've all seen things for, let's say, Black History Month or International Women's Day that are just so far off the mark for what they need to be, and just, so listening to your employees that are either allies or fall within those specific categories, I think, has been a big change, and trying to really figure out how to make people feel like they belong, which has been really nice to see. But there's always so much more work to be done, but I think we're off to a good start, let's say.
I think Ayesha's right. I mean, in terms of I love the way you call it popularising. I think often we hear from clients, and it's almost like they call it diversity fatigue. Right, and it's this is worrying if you're really feeling like that. So there was all this ticking of the box, making certain appointments, not thinking them through, not including, not belonging, and then almost went down a notch, right, with not having full diversity programs, but just going, we know we need to do that. Let's just tick the box and do it. Damaging even more for the future.
I just wanted to add one more point to that, which was around the belonging piece comes to life. The hiring piece is almost easy. It's the onboarding. What do you do in the first month, the 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, to really embed that individual? Because just taking my example, coming from banking to football, it's a massive change in terms of how the industry works, the sector works. So I needed the onboarding support. I needed some allies within the sports industry, outside of that. But in my HR role in banking, the hiring was almost easy. It's then what are we going to do to embed, by the engagement, get that cultural inclusion. That's when the hard work really kicks in. So I think employers have a responsibility to really focus on that.
I mean, do you think it's fair to say, Uma, that hey, congratulations, you've worked really hard, you've made your first hire from a demographic that's underrepresented in your organisation, but that's just the start.
It is just the start, and I think, certainly from the banking industry, a lot of line managers, and, male allies and sponsors are important, and there were plenty of men that were on this journey with us, but they also needed support and training around language, inclusive language, some programs, some initiatives, to help embed women into the organisation in a very male cutthroat environment. And I think football's probably going on a similar journey, and we could all do a lot more to sort of make it easier once you've sort of broken into a male-dominated sector, whatever that might be.
Thinking about this, we've talked about I think how employers have to kind of own it. I thought you talked about that really well, Ayesha, and it seems there's agreement. Think of some of the specifics that employers can do in the detail of their recruitment process. Euan, things like how the ad is phrased, what the interview questions are, what the panel looks like. What's the kind of current practice there? Is there a vision of good practice, and is it widely used?
Yeah, there definitely is, and it's changing for the positive. I still think there's a long way to go, and often as headhunters, not all environments, but we're kind of leading the debate and challenging clients, which is what we should be doing, and that's our responsibility. But as you say, making sure the selection panel in whatever form is diverse and inclusive, first and foremost. And the reality is some organisations, they just might not be at the point in their journey where they can have that. But there's ways around that, and certainly in the past for us, with other sports organisations, we were working with the British and Irish Lions last year on 2 non-exec roles. Their very makeup were white old men rugby players. So we managed to bring in an independent observer onto the NOMCO to help bring that diversity that they didn't have, which was a really, really important step. I think the second bit around language is really important, and there's now tools out there. So we've got an in-house diagnostic tool that can go through a candidate brief and make sure that the language is more inclusive, so that it's welcoming everybody from all backgrounds and all parts of life.
Helen, what about you? Are you seeing this, that people, employers are putting some focus on what good practice in recruitment looks like?
Yeah, I mean, we use similar tools. I mean, there are, in terms of the inclusive language and the imagery that you're using in your candidate brief so that people can see themselves as a part of that organisation. I think it's really important as search consultants, as recruiters, for us to have a balanced team. So we always have male and female on our senior searches, because it is just a fact that I have unconscious bias to women and to single parents, because that's who I see myself as, right? So, and I think that's another really important thing, that your recruiters and employers are getting that training and understanding that self-awareness, because we see the world not as it is, we see the world as we are, right? And that's absolutely key. And that's the type of education at a very base level that I think some employers aren't quite getting there, right? So that's really important. I feel very strongly about that, right? Because it makes such a difference in terms of how you're going to be treated in the world and the opportunities that you're going to get in front of you. But yeah, so working with hopefully, gender splits in terms of the team that's working on those roles, and also really, Euan said it, really checking and challenging the client, right? Because what will tend to happen on a female front, they'll say, we must get a woman on the shortlist. God, you will get a woman on the shortlist, won't you? And it's like, well, I think we can aim a little bit higher than that, actually. And most importantly, it's been proven that if you have 2 women on a shortlist, you're 70 times more greater to hire a woman, 70 times more likely to hire a woman than not. And it's the same with, it's much, much higher with ethnic minorities. I think it's 170 plus times, right? So it's, again, educating the employers to say 1 is not enough. That's not the bar we should be setting for ourselves, right? So I think that's really important for us to continue to challenge our clients in that way.
There's one of the challenges I often offer to people in my organisations who are recruiting is when I see a job description with like 15 mandatory requirements. Uma, you're nodding so wearily.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things. There's firstly, let's talk about, if you're the recruiter, do you really need 15? Let's talk about that. But I think there's also maybe to help the room. What do you do if you fancy the job, but you only meet 7 out of the 15? I don't know if you could start us on that.
Yeah, look, I think it's a really valid point. I think you pick up the phone to the recruiter and ask the individual for some help and advice. Certainly some of the roles I've seen in sports and in football, they're asking for a plethora of stuff, and I know that I probably can do 4 or 5 of them really well, but there's a whole raft of things that I'm not so great at. So I learned very quickly, actually, not to spend too much time applying for jobs where I just wouldn't even get a look in. So I think make the recruiter, the headhunter, your friend. Most headhunters, if they're good, like these two, will make the time to speak to you because it makes their life easier as well. They don't want to wade through lots of people that the skills are irrelevant. So I think that's a really good way of defining it. And then I think, to Euan's point, be authentic. And women are very, we're not very good at saying, I'll only do 3 things out of the 10, so I won't, we won't apply. That's what we'll do. A man will say, I can do 3 things and apply for the job. I'm now getting better at saying, I can do 4 out of the 8, but actually on the 8, I've got knowledge in this area. I've got something in this industry that I can dive into. So I think just be very authentic about what you can do on day 1 and what you can do by 6 months later. And I think recruiters and employers appreciate that.
Ayesha, do you think that's a message that lands well with the candidates you're working with?
Yeah, it's something that I've had more than one conversation with employers where if they do have a job description where there's just too many points, I say we can't. So one part of Diverse is we have a job board, and our aim with the job descriptions that we have is to kind of really actually sell the role to the candidates, because for Gen Z, who we focus on, it's not just about, can I do this job? It's, do I want to work here? Is this a good environment for me, etc. So countless amount of times I've spoken to an employer after getting a briefing and asked point by point, is this actually needed for the role? Is this needed for the role? And we're able to trim it down so much. Some are less flexible, and that's fine, but that's why I get across to the candidates that it really doesn't matter. I can't stress enough, like, even if you only think that you can do a couple of things, like, what's the worst thing that can happen if you apply and have that conversation and maybe find that you're a little bit better than you think you are? Again, with the confidence piece, someone could have, let's say, studied marketing at university, done an internship, and had like 4 solid years of experience, but they don't see that as actual experience because it's not in a workplace. But they can still use all the same softwares and tools, and they've used the exact same methods as people that are, they have that experience in the professional world. So yeah, just ignore it.
Can I tell you my absolute bugbear, which triggers me when I see it as a mandatory requirement? Must be a good team player. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not going to apply for, I was thinking I was going to apply for that job, but now I'm not because what a good team player. Said no one ever. Honestly,
Right,
it's just lazy thinking, isn't it?
Exactly,
Really lazy thinking.
And Ayesha's raised a really good point. Having the conversation is the start of a network and another connection. So if you've chatted to Helen or to Euan and you're not right for this role, you've now put yourself on the map for future roles, and there's your network starting to grow. So it's really important to do that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about networks, Uma. Say a little bit more, and maybe how your network. And for people who might be worried about how to begin, because again, they're sort of early or mid-stage career.
It's never too early to start networking. I had a fantastic piece of advice very early on in my life when I was about 18. I was fortunate enough to work on local radio. I met some amazing people, and actually just kept the connections going. And I think throughout my banking career, the value of an external network, not just women's networks, cross-sector, cross-industry networks. You need people that you can talk to about, I want to negotiate a pay rise, I want to actually go for a promotion, to actually technical skills, an expert in risk or compliance or whatever it was that I needed to do in banking. You need to find a tribe that's your safe place, like Women in Football, and actually being chair, I was chair and president of City Women's Network, and now I'm the sort of retired president, emeritus, very grand title. It is the longest established female network in the City of London, and it's exactly that network that launched me onto my first board role. So, please go and network, talk to people, give something back in return, as well. What can I do to help you? I always say that if somebody's giving you their time, what can I do to help you? Please look me up if I can offer something. It's invaluable, and I still do it religiously.
Fantastic. And Ayesha, it's come across loud and clear that Diverse is a community. And I think you're obviously giving candidates fantastic support, but are they also supporting each other and networking with each other?
Definitely, yeah. It's something that we So if we were to focus on one program that we run called Murky FC, which obviously women in football...
Yes, we'll talk about the Murky
Yeah,
FC.
we'll get into
Love
it a little bit more. But women in football are part of it. You actually, first hire of the program this year was for women in football, which is
Amazing.
really nice.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Does everyone know what Murky FC is? Oh, there she, yeah, oh, no, that's the boss, I think. Does everyone know what Murky FC is? Got anyone not know? Right, do you want to say a little bit?
Okay,
Ayesha,
yeah, I'll
explain
go into it quickly now. So it is a program, a partnership really, with Stormzy and Adidas. Essentially looking at the diversity on the pitch. There's loads. As soon as you come off the pitch, there's close to none. So Murky FC is an initiative brought in to help with that, helping to increase diversity off the pitch by offering roles in lots of different companies, but in terms of football teams, you've got Man U, Arsenal, Fulham, Women in Football, of course, but other companies like EA Sports, SI Games for gaming, and then a few creative agencies as well that work within the marketing side of football. And Diverse, we run the recruitment side of it, which was really incredible. And I think, yeah, so far we've hired 36 this year, 36 young people into lots of different types of roles. And we have an online community where everyone else is able to chat and support each other. So in terms of applications for the program, I think we had like 4,000 applications this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. And we let in 700. So a lot of the 4,000 maybe were a little bit older, because it's 18 to 24-year-olds, because we want to help people get their first job. But yeah, 700 of them, probably about 400 from last year. So everyone's in an online community, and I'm the community manager, so I have to keep it going my post, but they don't really want to hear from me. They want to hear from each other.
Yeah, that's nice.
So
Yeah.
people will post, like, we've got a lot of really incredible, like, graphic designers, things like that. They'll post their work in there. I had a couple of people post about he was doing like five-a-side, and he was hosting it, and he was inviting people from the community to
Amazing.
join. So yeah, I think going back to networking, one thing that I always say to them is, I know networking can sound like a bit of a scary word, just think of it as relationship building. It makes it a lot easier. Just if you see that you have something in common with someone, strike up a conversation. You never know where it can lead, or who you're actually speaking to, what doors they can open for you.
And I always say to people as well, when you walk into a room like this and you don't know anyone, you know, everyone's feeling the same. Everyone's feeling the same.
Exactly.
So, you know, we're all only human. We're all on a level here. So now one of the things I often say to the women who come on our leadership course, and some of you in this room might have heard me say it, is particularly on getting board ready, which will, but more generally, I always say very glibly, oh, of course, go and, you know, if you want some career advice on your next role, go and call Elevate or Odgers or many ones who are out there. And is that the right thing to do, Helen? Are you? My thinking is, but let me check this with you, is that you guys are always interested to hear from the talent, because that's kind of your role.
Of course.
Yeah.
We would be nothing without our talent, without
Yeah.
people, without candidates, right? So, of course, we need the clients, but they're there. It's about building and developing our talent, our candidate database. And interestingly, we build a lot. We do C-suite work and a lot of board work, but we also do sort of future leader work, because we know that they're going to be the leaders of the future, right? So absolutely. If I would suggest, if you have a search consultant, that when you're talking, so I'd just like a little bit of advice. Have you got 15 minutes? You know, can we build a relationship? And they say, no, I haven't got a job available for you at the moment. Don't bother with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Because that's not what it's about. Of course, our consultants aren't going to be sitting on the phone 24/7 just giving career advice out, right? But at some point, you know, they're not brain surgeons. They're not doing 24/7 shifts. At some point, they are going to have 10 minutes to give to a candidate. And if they don't have that, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
And that candidate can sometimes become the client. And they'll remember.
What do you mean sometimes?
Exactly.
Every single time.
Exactly.
You know, I'm sure you will have examples
Yeah.
of people that you have spoken to over the years for 10 years and you've never made any money out of them, or whatever you want to say it. But that relationship has built. They've introduced you to people. You've formed a relationship. You've helped them. They've helped you. This is what this business is about.
Yeah.
So if it's like, I don't have anything that's right for you at the moment,
Walk
and
away.
then nothing, forget it.
I couldn't agree more, because that's ultimately, that's our careers, and a lot of us have been doing it a long time and hope to do it for a long time. So it's within headhunters' interest to get to know you. I think the second bit as well is the more touch points you have with people, the better understanding you have of them, which enables the headhunters to go in and really position you properly around why you're suitable for a role, or even the areas where there might be a gap or a development area. If that headhunter knows you, and it goes back to Uma's point about that sort of authenticity, I've been doing this for 20 years. If you ask a bloke about, where do you think the development areas are gaps, and they'll go, well, there probably aren't any, and you're like, oh my God. Whereas I think women by nature are much more authentic, but that's brilliant, because when we're challenging our clients of saying, okay, well, you want more diversity, you want more inclusion, these 4 things we can hit, but actually, why don't you think about how do you redefine that role, or how do we, as Uma says, how do we onboard properly? How do we put a training program around this individual who ticks 4 out of 5 things, but then can grow into the role? So again, that comes back to developing a relationship, being honest and authentic about who you are and what stage you're at in your career. And as Helen said, if a headhunter or a recruiter doesn't have time for that, then don't waste your time with them. There'll be lots that will do.
Let's take a little bit of a breather, because I'm going to read out to the room some of the things I've written down in terms of takeaways. While I do that, could my colleagues at the back just give me a time check, please? 10 minutes. Okay, so here's the things I've written down. Pay attention to the top third of your CV, because you can lose people if that's not right. Be mindful that recruiters now often use word recognition, so make sure you're reflecting back the words in the ads. Build up your confidence, and that's not a quick one.
As easy as that.
As easy as that, I know, but I think we've heard
Definitely, it's really
powerful talk
important.
about communities,
Yeah.
networks. You're here. Look at some of the work we do. We can help with that. Be authentic in your CV. Talk to the recruiter if you've any questions or concerns or issues, or even like, is this a role for me? Talk to the recruiter, and speak to recruitment consultants, even if it's not in relation to a specific job, because this came across loud and clear. They want to hear from you. They really do. Their business is getting to know who you are. Great. Let's just pause for a moment and see if there are any questions. Yes, Anna. Is there a mic, folks? Yep, there's one coming. So if you're going to ask questions, just wait for the mic to come to you. And if you could just say who you are and where you're from.
Thank you. Anna Dignan, Premier League. One observation, Ayesha, about the job specs. It's really interesting, because some of the young women that I mentor, they bring a job spec to me and they self-exclude, because they say, well, I can only do 50% of what's on the job spec. And I remind them that actually, in my experience, and I have mentored men look at job specs in a very different way. They think, well, I've got 50% on my CV, but I can probably, blag the other 50%. And is that a fair reflection from our recruitment colleagues? The other thing is a question. Has there been a shift in the marketplace now? Are recruiters coming to you, employers coming to you and saying, I don't just want to fill my quota, I actually want to make my business better by having more diverse workforce, more women in senior leadership roles? Because the evidence is there, it was cited in the last session, that women at senior levels make us more successful. So have you noticed that shift amongst employers? And if not, are you trying to engineer that shift?
Can I just say, but I'll come to you in a sec, but one of Jane Purdon's great rules of life, based on this, I applied for a job I didn't think I was going to get, and I only did it because my best friend lagged me. It was 25 years ago, and it was actually my first job in football. So one of my great rules of life, and please write this down on your list of takeaways, always, always, always apply for the job you don't think you're going to get. Please, I'm begging you. And forget the fact you only hit 50%, as the panel have said. Ignore all that crap. if you fancy it, if it's lit a spark in your heart, go for it. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Helen.
I would say some, but not many. So I'd love to say, yeah, it's really changing, it's so different. But in general, if you're being briefed and they're sort of, and the client is saying we really want a diverse shortlist, or we're underrepresented in this area, they're not really making that obvious connection to, because it's better for our business and it's right for the dynamics, and we're going to be better having a more diverse workforce and leadership team in particular, because everyone quotes that they're half women and include everyone and not the leadership levels. So I think there still isn't that kind of authenticity behind it. Some are good, and like we did have a client last year who said, I only want to see women. And it was quite interesting, because then it caused this big hoo-ha around, well, you know, that's sexist on the other side. I was like, oh, really? Come on, get over it, right? And it was a finance ops related role as well, so it was really pleasing that it wasn't just the HR or the marketing role where they can put a woman in. But it's very unusual for that. A lot of employers will still think, well, you know, if I have to put a diverse candidate in, they're probably not going to be, I'll then have to support them and develop them. They automatically presume that they're not going to be the best candidate, because again, the response is always, oh yeah, but it'll be the best person for the job. We know you want a diverse shortlist, but we're going to get the best person for the job. And it's like, yes, who is likely a woman? Funnily enough, maybe, who'd have thought? So good, but could try harder.
Can I just add something to that? In my search to get a portfolio career with lots of boards, early days, good lessons to learn, took me a while. I was on lots of shortlists because I'm a brown-faced female and was getting nowhere, and I was getting completely disheartened, disillusioned. And I very kindly picked up the phone to Euan and your colleague Simon and just asked you for some advice. So again, good recruiters are there to talk to. I haven't seen you. I've never met Euan, by the way. I've only ever done business on Zoom, and today he's in 3D. I think the best advice you gave me, which still sticks with me, is if you are constantly being selected and then dropped out after phase one, go back to the recruiter and ask, what is it about me that you think you want to include to this client? So I got a bit better about, apart from the fact I'm a woman and a brown-faced woman, what is it? And I quickly self-selected out because I wasn't hearing the right reasons. So targets and quotas, I want to be hired on my credibility and my experience, not because I look like this. So there's a delicate balance when you're doing your search around asking very specific questions. I'm a woman, is that why I'm on the list? I'm an Indian woman, is that why I'm on the list? And be very, very clear that your value and your worth is what you want them to position, not what you look like. That takes time. It took me a long time to get there. And that's where these lovely recruiter people that are good will give you good counsel and good advice. So I think it's worth mentioning that.
100%. Thank you, Uma. Any more questions? We've got a couple here. Let's go to this lady first, then we'll come to you.
Mine's more of a question, but a bit of an insight as well. So I realised that when it comes to recruiting, sometimes I've heard a lot of professionals or organisations saying, I can't get those hard-to-reach communities. Mm-hmm. And I always find we're not hard to reach, you're just not reaching us the right way. So I think it's always important when they're setting out their strategies or setting out the criteria to make sure they have someone on board that actually knows what language to use, where to promote it, where to look, because it's not, especially if you're looking for that ethnic minority, you'll get them where they might not always be present in places you're looking at. So I think it's a building bridge between organisation recruiters, but also the community and the people that are actually looking to get employed. So there needs to be that transparent kind of communication and insight.
If you don't mind, panel, I'll respond to this because I totally agree with you, and I've kind of been on this journey a couple of times with different organisations, and it's hard work. And I think that it has to be. If it's not hard work, you're not doing it right. I learned a lot through it, and one of the things I learned was it's not just about what you put in your ad or the comms around it and the lovely images you put in, or the boilerplate BS about we're an equal opportunities organisation. It's about how you show up to the world as an organisation in everything. Am I right? Yeah. Again, panel, what's your thoughts on that? Quickly, because I know there's another lady here who wants a question.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, and I suppose this links back to, how advanced are we? And I agree with Helen. I think there's some good practice, but there's a long way to go. But I actually think now is probably the best time. There's the Parker report yesterday had one bit in it that was talking about Search 2.0, and I wouldn't say read it all, but if you can find it. But it was really interesting. I was saying, look, we've got to challenge the whole paradigm around how we assess people and that whole search process. And it was tying into exactly that, where our partnerships are, the whole evaluation technique. I mean, even the idea of an hour interview and really assessing if somebody's fit for purpose. So I think we're getting better, we're going there, but there's a long way to go.
But we were talking about
Sorry,
that,
Helen, can I just get this lady in, because I've just had my minute warning, and I did promise her a question, so.
Thank you. Nikita from 90 Min. I've done a lot of recruitment in kind of my career, and before I joined 90 Min, I was actually had a conversation with a recruiter who told me that the salary and the level of role that I wanted, I wouldn't get based on my experience, but I knew what I could bring to a company and I knew what I was worth, and I then ended up searching for a job myself without a recruiter, and I just kind of wanted to highlight that it's so important to know kind of what you bring to a company, what value you have, and to really believe in yourself, because you can get told by even great recruiters that they won't be able to find you a job. But I think you really have to just kind of believe in that, especially like as being a woman working in sports, being in any type of minority. I think it's really important that we support each other to be able to kind of push those boundaries and to get into those roles that are often kind of not given to us. And yeah, just interested to kind of hear from the panel, like what you would kind of do to help support, minorities and people in those kind of positions.
Can I have, because I'm getting the eye from over there. Oh, I'm not getting the eye. Okay. Can I have one sentence in answer to that question from each member of the panel? What's your one thing you would do to...
Yeah, to just kind of, I guess, to help break those boundaries, to help people, I guess from more of a recruitment standpoint, to understand and believe in themselves, what their worth is, and to help them get into those positions.
Okay, so what's the one thing recruiters should do to break those boundaries?
The one thing recruiters should do?
Let's say employers. Top one thing.
I think they need to reframe in their mind what good leadership is.
Right.
Because I think many will go out looking for a certain type of leader because that's the type of leader that they are, or a certain type of marketing director or whatever role you're in. So reframing what future leaders are going to look like.
Thank you. Uma.
It's two things, but in one sentence.
Okay.
Raise your own profile and brand. Put yourself out there so that you're showcasing yourself on LinkedIn or whatever with your skills and your authenticity and your background. And then when you've got that role, use it to insert an influence. And I'm now chairing REMCO for the English Football League Trust. So I'm going to be doing all the hiring. So it's taken me 3 years to get that role. So when you're in that position of influence, offer yourself, because people need to see that you look like them to then be able to be inspired to say, actually, I can do that as well. So, yeah, use your position and your platform effectively once you've got there.
Lovely. Thank you. Ayesha?
I'd probably say to arm yourself with knowledge, which is what it sounds like you did. So have a good understanding of your value on the market for the industry that you're looking at. And don't listen. If you know that your market value is higher than what someone will tell you it is, let's move on to the next person like nice. You did, and you were able to find it.
Yeah, nice. Love that story, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, good story.
Yeah, well, from the recruiter perspective, the biggest thing we can do is challenge our clients. And I think the second thing, and I know a lot of people here do it, is, we're working upstream and doing events and identifying future leaders and doing the networking things. Do it, come along, because the more you're in the room, the more you're going to build your own brand with headhunters and clients.
Brilliant, thank you. Folks, we could go on. We didn't even get on to talk about our definition of leadership, which we expounded on beautifully in our call on Friday, so we'll have to come back next year and do that.
Another session.
Folks, can you say a thank you to our wonderful panel? Thank you.